Have you ever felt the weight of eyes upon you? Not just the casual glance of curiosity, but the measured, calculating gaze of someone assessing, judging, perhaps fearing the storm that simmers quietly behind your calm exterior? Have you asked yourself why certain people instinctively recoil, why respect is given with hesitation, why even allies measure their words with caution? This is the beginning of understanding the dangerous, intimidating personality, the kind that Machiavelli described not as mere cruelty, but as mastery over perception, presence, and power itself. In the quiet corridors of ambition, where shadows stretch longer than light, this personality is not born from arrogance alone, but from a subtle cultivation of the human psyche, a meticulous orchestration of fear, respect, and unpredictability. It is the art of commanding without shouting, of moving without visible effort, of bending circumstance and human behavior to your will without leaving fingerprints. The signs are not always loud. They whisper. They manifest in gestures, in reactions, in the sudden stillness that follows a room where you enter. First, there is the cold clarity with which you observe the world. While others stumble in emotion, flinch at confrontation, or chase fleeting admiration, you see patterns. Every smile, every hesitation, every nuance of tone is data. You internalize it, let it settle like sediment in water, and then you act with precision. This is not calculation for calculation's sake. It is strategy, a Machiavellian patience that waits for the exact moment to strike or to bend the outcome without unnecessary exposure. People notice, even subconsciously, that you are always 3 steps ahead. Your mind is a chessboard where others see only scattered pieces. That awareness breeds unease, not because you are openly threatening, but because your presence itself signals that the world is not chaotic under your observation. It is predictable, and they are merely pieces to be moved. Second, there is the magnetism of silence. Most people fear emptiness in conversation, the awkward pause that demands attention. But the dangerous personality wields silence like a blade, slicing through pretense and revealing truth in subtle tension. Words, when they come, are deliberate, sharp, unassailable. You do not chatter for approval. You speak to define reality. The unpredictability of your verbal restraint unsettles because others cannot anticipate your intentions. They lean in, waiting for the next cue, and in doing so, they surrender a fraction of their control. In Machiavelli's philosophy, the ability to instill uncertainty is power, not chaos, but the controlled uncertainty that forces others to hesitate, to second-guess, to weigh their actions against your unseen judgment. Third, there is the absence of dependency. Those who intimidate understand that attachment, neediness, or overt desire for validation is a weakness others will exploit. You do not crave applause or approval. You act because it aligns with your objectives, not to satisfy social expectation. This independence is not merely external, it is internalized. You make choices not out of fear of loss, but out of precise calculation of gain. Others sense it. It radiates from posture, gaze, and the subtle cadence of movement. You are the eye that watches the storm, never buffeted by the winds around you. Machiavelli would recognize this as mastery of self, the first and most unassailable form of power, because it cannot be stolen or undermined without your consent. Fourth, there is the fearless confrontation of truth, both internal and external. Dangerous personalities do not shy from the shadows of human behavior, from the betrayal, the envy, the ambition that festers beneath civility. You face it directly, you name it, you use it. Others fear this honesty, not because it is harsh, but because it is inevitable. While most flinch or rationalize, you recognize that truth, no matter how cold, is a tool. Machiavelli argued that a ruler who hides from reality will be overthrown by it. Similarly, a person who confronts reality with unflinching clarity commands respect, and sometimes fear. Your gaze does not lie. Your actions reflect comprehension of human nature in its rawest form. This is what gives your presence an almost predatory weight, the understanding that you will act in accordance with reality, not illusion. Fifth, there is the cultivation of reputation as armor. Those with dangerous, intimidating personas understand that perception can be as lethal as action. You are meticulous in how you are seen, not for vanity, but for strategy. Rumors, whispers, and subtle displays of skill or influence are not accidents. They are tools to project power without overexposure. You know the subtle difference between respect and fear, and you manage both with care. Machiavelli's dark lessons teach that it is better to be feared than loved, but never hated. You embody this by maintaining a balance between intimidation and controlled rapport. You are a storm glimpsed on the horizon, inescapable, inevitable, yet not indiscriminately destructive. Sixth, there is the paradoxical empathy. This may seem counterintuitive. How can one be empathetic yet dangerous? The answer is selective understanding. You read others with precision, not to nurture, but to manipulate, to predict, to guide outcomes. You understand desire, weakness, and ambition in others as tools for leverage. Empathy here is not softness, it is a scalpel, applied with expert knowledge. Machiavelli would recognize this as the highest form of strategic intelligence, to navigate human behavior with insight while remaining untouchable by sentiment. Others are laid bare before you, yet you remain sovereign, untangled from their emotional snares. Seventh, there is the aura of inevitability. Dangerous personalities carry away an unspoken declaration that their presence changes outcomes. Decisions made in their sphere are colored by the silent understanding of their influence. Allies and adversaries alike adjust, not because of coercion, but because the trajectory of events seems subtly aligned with their will. Machiavelli's darkest lesson emerges here. The art of power is often invisible. The subtle orchestration of events, the quiet guidance of others' choices, and the perception of omnipresence make you formidable. You are not a tyrant screaming from a throne. You are the silent authority whose shadow stretches longer than any overt display of force. And so, the question returns. Do you feel it within yourself? The potential to command in silence, to inspire fear with presence, to bend the currents of social reality without overt confrontation? The dangerous, intimidating personality is not merely an aesthetic or a temperament. It is a deliberate architecture of mind, behavior, and perception. It is the culmination of observation, restraint, independence, clarity, selective empathy, and the manipulation of human instinct. Each sign is not an accident but a tool, a lesson in strategic mastery over self and others. As the world moves blindly, flailing in emotion and vanity, the dangerous individual stands like a dark lighthouse, immovable, calculating, and seen but not touched. You are entering the realm of Machiavelli's darkest teachings, where morality bends before effectiveness, where perception is as potent as action, and where the mind becomes the most lethal instrument of power. To recognize these signs in yourself is not vanity, it is awakening to potential, the kind that unsettles others, commands respect, and quietly, yet inevitably, alters the fabric of human interaction around you. Once you have glimpsed the architecture of your own potential, the next realization emerges like a slow, deliberate pulse in the veins of perception. Power is always relational. It is not something you seize once and keep. It is a living, breathing tension between yourself and the world. To wield a dangerous, intimidating personality, one must understand the subtle currents of influence and dominance that flow unseen beneath social interactions. Every conversation, every gesture, every glance carries weight, and your mastery lies in knowing which to amplify and which to suppress. Machiavelli's lessons are never abstract. They are the code by which the strong navigate the weak, and the wise navigate the strong. This is not cruelty, it is precision. It is the knowledge that those who fail to see the world for what it is, who allow emotion to cloud judgment, are destined to be manipulated, outmaneuvered, and ultimately subdued. Observe closely how others react to proximity. Notice the micro-tremors of discomfort when you assert a mere glance of scrutiny. The dangerous mind understands that intimidation is not loud, not brazen. It is subtle, quiet, yet undeniable. It manifests in the stillness of your posture, in the deliberate timing of speech, in the patience to let tension simmer until it ripens into a decisive moment. People instinctively sense when control is possible, and when it is impossible, they instinctively yield when confronted with inevitability. This is the silent power of the dangerous personality, to exist as an axis around which others orbit, aware that deviation from your perceived authority may carry unseen consequences. It is an elegance of fear, a poetry of dominance that requires no outward display of force, only the quiet insistence of calculated presence. Consider also the art of unpredictability. Those who are easily read are easily defeated. The intimidating individual cultivates a mind that does not adhere to expectation. Decisions are neither rash nor reckless. They are impossible to anticipate without knowledge of intent. People naturally attempt to pattern behavior, to predict outcomes. The dangerous personality denies this comfort. You understand that perception is malleable and that people's own assumptions can be weaponized. A simple change in tone, a pause, a deliberate misdirection, these are the tools of psychological strategy, the whispered signature of Machiavellian influence. Others sense it instinctively, and the tension it produces is intoxicating. The unpredictability is not chaos, it is control disguised as freedom, a dance in which every step is choreographed while appearing spontaneous. The dangerous mind also understands alliances as instruments, not indulgences. Relationships are rarely purely sentimental. They are networks of influence, conduits of opportunity, and barriers against vulnerability. Machiavelli taught that a ruler must maintain loyalty without dependence, influence without attachment. The same principle applies to the intimidating individual. Friends, colleagues, even rivals can be positioned to act according to your strategic vision, if only they perceive that alignment with your will is inevitable, beneficial, or both. You do not manipulate for malice, you orchestrate for efficacy. Every interaction is a negotiation of power, every conversation a test of awareness. This does not make you heartless, it makes you perceptive, and in a world where ignorance is punished by exploitation, perception is the ultimate weapon. Next, consider the cultivation of controlled visibility. Dangerous personalities understand that power is not merely what you possess, it is what others perceive you to possess. Reputation, influence, and capability are signals transmitted subtly, reinforced through deliberate action and selective revelation. A whisper of competence, a hint of resolve, a carefully timed display of skill can instill more fear than 1,000 overt gestures. People are more afraid of what they cannot fully comprehend than what is plainly visible. Machiavelli recognized this principle in rulers and generals alike. Uncertainty breeds caution. Caution breeds hesitation. Hesitation breeds advantage. To walk through a room and leave its occupants uncertain of the full extent of your ability is to wield influence without lifting a finger. Then there is the mastery of emotional equilibrium. Those with dangerous personalities are not impervious to feeling, but they are impervious to reaction. Anger, elation, fear, desire, these are tools for others, not chains for oneself. When provoked, you respond with precision, not impulse. When admired, you accept it without arrogance. When threatened, you observe without panic. This detachment is not coldness for its own sake, it is the foundation upon which influence is built. People instinctively detect instability, and instability invites exploitation. By remaining calm and measured, you communicate strength, competence, and inevitability. You signal that, regardless of circumstance, your trajectory is unalterable, and the world must bend or break before it. Another hallmark of the dangerous personality is the nuanced use of intimidation. Intimidation is not yelling or threats or displays of physical dominance. It is the strategic amplification of presence and perception, the creation of tension that fork. As others, to consider their actions carefully. When applied judiciously, it can prevent conflict, command respect, and ensure compliance without overt coercion. Machiavelli's teachings echo here. It is better to be feared than loved, but never hated. The dangerous individual strikes this balance by combining authority with unpredictability, skill with discretion, and dominance with subtlety. The effect is magnetic, unsettling, and quietly unavoidable. Consider also the mastery of timing. Every action, every statement, every reveal must be executed with meticulous attention to context. Acting too soon exposes vulnerability, acting too late surrenders initiative. The intimidating personality becomes attuned to the rhythms of social and psychological currents, sensing the precise moment when influence will be maximized. Patience is not passivity, it is the silent accumulation of advantage. Just as a predator waits for the exact moment to strike, the dangerous individual positions themselves in anticipation, ensuring that when action is taken, it is decisive, undeniable, and irreversible. Finally, there is the cultivation of a mental fortress. Dangerous personalities are impervious to manipulation. because they understand both themselves and the world with clarity. They anticipate betrayal, envy, and ambition not as abstract threats, but as concrete realities to be navigated. Every interaction is filtered through layers of analysis, intention, consequence, perception, leverage. This mental discipline produces a calm, unwavering presence, one that radiates authority without ostentation. It is the culmination of observation, strategic thought, self-mastery, and human insight. In Machiavelli's framework, this is the true mark of a leader, and it is the same mark that distinguishes the dangerous, intimidating personality from the ordinary. In these ways, the personality that commands fear and respect is neither accidental nor superficial. It is deliberate, cultivated through observation, patience, emotional control, perception management, strategic empathy, and timing. It is a psychological architecture designed to influence, manipulate, and dominate the social and emotional landscapes in which it operates. And yet, it is invisible to the untrained eye. Those who possess it walk among others, their power radiating quietly, subtly, inevitably, leaving impressions of authority that cannot be articulated, only felt. As you reflect on these principles, consider how they manifest not in grand gestures, but in the subtle, everyday interactions that define influence and power. The dangerous personality is not always visible in grandeur. It is manifest in the pause before a decision, the weight behind a glance, the patient orchestration of outcomes long before they are noticed. Those who recognize this see the threads of control, influence, and inevitability woven throughout the social fabric. The rest remain oblivious, susceptible to manipulation, and dominated by those who understand the dark, precise, and relentless logic of human behavior. And so, the journey continues. Understanding these signs is merely the threshold. To inhabit this mindset, to truly cultivate a presence that unsettles, commands, and dominates requires relentless introspection, strategy, and action. Machiavelli's darkest lessons are not theoretical. They are practical, actionable, and, for those who dare, transformative. The dangerous, intimidating personality is not a mask, it is a forged reality, constructed through discipline, calculation, and the ruthless observation of human nature. Power is often disguised as kindness, subtlety, or even harmlessness, and the truly dangerous personality understands that the art of domination rarely requires overt confrontation. Manipulation is an invisible current, flowing beneath social interactions, guiding behavior without notice, bending outcomes without resistance. The Machiavellian mind sees the levers hidden in plain sight: desires, fears, ambitions, and insecurities. Every human carries them, and every interaction is an opportunity to exploit, redirect, or neutralize them. The dangerous personality learns this early, not as a lesson in cruelty, but as a necessity for survival and influence in a world that is blind to subtle power. Those who fail to grasp it are forever at the mercy of the more perceptive, the more calculating, the ones whose presence alone can shift tides without a single overt command. Consider the dynamics of social dominance. In any group, there is always a hierarchy, even when unspoken. The dangerous individual does not blindly climb. It understands the architecture of influence and positions itself where authority is felt rather than proclaimed. Observe the small interactions: a welt eye, mid-interruption, a gaze that halts speech, a nod that seals consensus. These microactions create a gravity that is impossible to resist. People unconsciously align themselves with the one whose presence commands inevitability, whose mental clarity renders hesitation dangerous. Machiavelli understood this in the context of princes and statesmen, but it is equally relevant to personal dynamics. Dominance is a silent signal, a force that can rearrange alliances, bend choices, and ensure compliance without a single overt act of coercion. Manipulation thrives in the interstices of perception and reality. The dangerous personality crafts situations where others act in ways that seem spontaneous but are guided by invisible hands. It is not deception for its own sake, but orchestration, the careful management of outcomes by exploiting predictable human tendencies. People reveal themselves through overconfidence, desire for approval, fear of loss, or blind loyalty. To the untrained eye, this is mere human behavior, chaotic and ungovernable. To the perceptive mind, it is a map, a set of patterns waiting to be traced, understood, and directed. Every word, every gesture, every silence can be a tool, if wielded with precision. The truly dangerous individual does not need confrontation, influence, perception, and control suffice. There is also the subtle art of tension, fear and respect, carefully balanced, create a dynamic in which compliance becomes almost involuntary. But the dangerous personality is cautious. Too much fear breeds hatred, and hatred invites rebellion. Too little, and influence is diluted. The equilibrium lies in measured intimidation, quiet authority, and the careful cultivation of awe. Presence becomes a weapon, the way you enter a room, the patience in your speech, the minimalistic decisiveness of your actions. Others feel compelled to measure themselves against you, to adjust behavior, to tread lightly. This is not tyranny, it is strategic dominance, a reflection of mastery over perception. Machiavelli's advice resonates. Fear is a tool, and like all tools, it must be applied with precision. Another defining trait of the dangerous personality is adaptability. Rigidity is vulnerability. The world is not static, and neither are human reactions. Those who intimidate must anticipate not only action but resistance, not only loyalty but betrayal. You observe patterns, yes, but you also adapt to interruptions, deviations, and attempts to counter your influence. The dangerous mind thrives in complexity, finding opportunity where others see chaos. Flexibility does not mean compromise. It means the capacity to redirect, to manipulate contingencies, and to transform potential threats into instruments of advantage. Machiavelli's rulers survived not by brute force alone, but by their ability to navigate shifting alliances and turbulent circumstances. The same principle applies here. Mastery of influence is mastery of adaptation. Consider the cultivation of mystique. Visibility can be as dangerous as invisibility. The balance is delicate. Those who are too understood are vulnerable to prediction and exploitation. Those who are too obscure risk irrelevance. The dangerous personality maintains a controlled enigma, revealing just enough to command attention while withholding the full scope of power. You allow glimpses of capability, hints of strategy, shadows of intent. Others are drawn in, unnerved, and compelled to measure their words and actions. This is psychological leverage. People act differently when uncertain, adjusting behavior to what they perceive as inevitable consequences. By controlling perception, you influence decisions without overt coercion, shaping reality in ways that are subtle, profound, and relentless. Fear, however, is not the only tool. The dangerous personality wields admiration and respect with equal precision. People are drawn to competence, to the calm authority of someone who seems unshakable amidst chaos. You create a presence that suggests mastery, skill, and foresight, and others instinctively defer to it. But admiration alone is insufficient. It must coexist with tension. The balance between approachability and enigma, between empathy and detachment, creates a gravity that is magnetic and subtly intimidating. The truly dangerous individual understands that influence is most effective when it feels inevitable yet earned, when obedience seems voluntary, and respect is mingled with awe. Isolation, too, becomes a tool. Dangerous personalities do not require constant affirmation or companionship. They are comfortable in their own minds, capable of strategizing and observing without distraction. This independence is often misread as arrogance, but it is a calculated shield against vulnerability. Emotional distance prevents manipulation, and solitude sharpens awareness. Machiavelli emphasized the necessity of self-reliance for rulers. Here, it is equally critical for personal dominance. By remaining unattached to the expectations or judgments of others, you maintain control over perception, action, and outcome. Then there is the power of selective revelation. Not everything is revealed at once. Information, capability, and intent are doled out strategically. The dangerous individual does not disclose weaknesses, intentions, or knowledge unnecessarily. By controlling the flow of insight, you manipulate perception and guide behavior. Others act according to the cues you provide, often unaware of the subtle orchestration behind their choices. Machiavelli would recognize this as the essence of cunning, the art of achieving objectives while remaining unseen as the hand that directs events. Finally, consider the internal discipline that underpins all of this. Observation, strategic manipulation, Emotional control, adaptability, and perception management require mental rigor. Dangerous personalities cultivate focus, patience, and analytical precision. Every interactee on is an opportunity for insight or leverage. Every reaction is calculated. Every silence is intentional. This internal architecture of self-mastery is the bedrock of intimidation. Power is most formidable when it is invisible, when it operates quietly yet inexorably, shaping reality without resistance. To walk among others with a dangerous, intimidating presence is not a matter of posturing or aggression. It is a matter of quiet, relentless mastery over mind, perception, and circumstance. Machiavelli's lessons are lived, not merely studied. The manipulation of human behavior, the orchestration of social dynamics, the cultivation of inevitability and mystique, all these converge to form a personality that commands fear and respect without overt force. The truly dangerous individual is not merely present in the world, they shape it, one subtle influence at a time, until outcomes align with intention as naturally as tides follow the moon. And so, the path deepens. Recognizing these principles is only the beginning. To truly embody them, to cultivate a presence that unnerves, dominates, and commands without exposure, requires relentless practice, reflection, and awareness. Every glank, every word, every movement is an instrument. Every reaction of others is data to be interpreted, leveraged, and redirected. You are no longer merely participating in life. You are orchestrating it, shaping it with invisible hands, wielding influence with the precision of a mind that has learned the darkest truths of human behavior. Power is intoxicating, but the truly dangerous personality understands that influence is not a commodity to be flaunted recklessly. It is a currency to be spent judiciously, a force that must be measured, anticipated, and reinforced at every interaction. Fear and respect, when balanced, produce compliance. Miscalculation produces resistance, resentment, and vulnerability. The dark lesson here is simple, yet profound. Those who underestimate subtle authority are often undone by it, and those who overexpose it become vulnerable to countermeasures. Machiavelli knew this in the courts of Florence, and today, the lesson is universal. Influence is most potent when invisible, when it operates beneath perception, shaping behavior without overt assertion. The dangerous personality walks this line daily, cultivating authority not through volume but through precision, timing, and perception. Observe how tension is wielded. The dangerous individual does not need to dominate every moment. Dominance is earned in subtle increments. A pause before answering, a deliberate choice of words, a glance that measures comprehension. These are the instruments of quiet power. Others cannot resist analyzing, predicting, adjusting, and, in doing so, surrendering agency. Machiavelli's insight is clear. Fear is a tool, not a crutch, and when balanced with calculated respect, it becomes a force that guides behavior without coercion. The dangerous mind manipulates expectation, using uncertainty as leverage, bending outcomes to intent while leaving others with the illusion of choice. Consider the psychology of envy and ambition. Humans are naturally competitive, often unaware of the subtle currents that guide their actions. The intimidating personality exploits this, positioning themselves not as overt adversaries, but as inevitable benchmarks. Others measure themselves against you, consciously or unconsciously, aligning actions with perceived superiority or distance. This creates a sphere of influence that extends beyond immediate presence. By mastering the displays of competence, calm authority, and calculated unpredictability, the dangerous individual compels alignment without confrontation. Machiavelli recognized that perception governs power. Here, it manifests as psychological dominance, quiet yet unassailable. The dangerous personality also understands the utility of calculated detachment. Emotional involvement clouds judgment, invites manipulation, and exposes vulnerability. To maintain authority, one must remain emotionally sovereign, observing events with clarity, patience, and strategic foresight. This detachment is not absence of feeling, but mastery over reaction. You can empathize selectively, read intentions, and influence outcomes without becoming ensnared by sentiment. Others, attuned to human instinct, sense this detachment. It is simultaneously magnetic and intimidating. They perceive competence, clarity, and inevitability, and are compelled to yield accordingly. Isolation becomes a subtle weapon. By limiting exposure to unnecessary influence, the dangerous mind remains unassailable, capable of observing without distraction and acting without compromise. Machiavelli warned rulers of the dangers of dependency. The lesson holds in the personal sphere. Independence cultivates respect, ensures clarity of judgment, and creates an aura of unassailability. People defer instinctively to those who do not seek their approval, who are self-contained, who command presence without clinging to validation. This is not arrogance, it is strategic sovereignty. Fear is wielded carefully. The truly intimidating individual knows that fear without respect is fragility, and respect without fear is flattery. By balancing these elements, you cultivate influence that is enduring and self-reinforcing. Others act in anticipation of your response, adjusting behavior to the perceived consequences of crossing your boundaries or challenging your authority. This psychological leverage is subtle, pervasive, and nearly invisible. Machiavelli understood that rulers are safest when feared but not hated, and the principle is identical here. Intimidation must be tempered with calculated respect lest it backfire. Timing remains a critical weapon. Action without preparation is reckless. Delay without purpose is surrender. The dangerous personality senses opportunity with acute awareness, striking or influencing at the precise moment to maximize effect. This is the difference between being seen as competent and being seen as inevitable. People are compelled to align not merely because of ability, but because of timing, anticipation, and the perception of control. Every interaction becomes a test of awareness. Who perceives reality most accurately, who can act with precision, who can orchestrate outcomes. Without exposure, the cultivation of mystique deepens influence. When others cannot fully comprehend your capabilities, they are compelled to respect, fear, or defer to you. Mystery amplifies authority. By revealing only necessary information, maintaining composure, and demonstrating competence in measured increments, the dangerous individual creates a psychological gravity that attracts attention, manipulates perception, and constrains the options of others. This is subtle power, the orchestration of reality through the perception of inevitability, rather than forceful assertion. The dangerous personality understands betrayal as a tool, not solely a threat. Recognizing human ambition and envy, one can anticipate and manage opposition preemptively by identifying potential challenges early and influencing their trajectory through persuasion, subtle pressure, or strategic alignment. The individual converts potential threats into mechanisms of control. Machiavelli advised rulers to preempt rebellion through foresight, and here the same principle applies. Awareness, anticipation, and subtle orchestration neutralize opposition before it manifests. Internal discipline is the unseen foundation of all this. Observation, psychological insight, emotional control, strategic patience, and perception management require rigor. The dangerous mind cultivates these faculties relentlessly, ensuring that every glance, word, and action contributes to influence and control. Others sense this discipline intuitively. It manifests as inevitability, competence, and presence. The truly intimidating individual is formidable precisely because their mastery is silent, internalized, and pervasive, shaping outcomes with minimal overt intervention. And so, as you navigate human interaction, consider how subtle dominance, careful manipulation, emotional sovereignty, timing, mystique, and internal discipline converge. The dangerous, intimidating personality is not merely visible, it is the invisible architecture of influence, perception, and inevitability. Machiavelli's darkest lessons illuminate this path, revealing that true power is psychological, relational, and strategic. To embody it is to walk a tightrope of perception and influence, commanding respect and fear in equal measure, orchestrating reality without exposure, and shaping outcomes with the quiet, relentless authority of the disciplined mind. In the shadows of social interaction, the dangerous individual thrives. Every reaction of others is data, every hesitation an opportunity, every alignment a confirmation of influence. The world bends subtly to presence, to perception, to inevitability. And as you cultivate this understanding, you realize that danger is not a threat, it is a state of mind, a refined skill, and a mastery of human behavior that elevates the individual beyond ordinary influence into the realm of the inevitable, the feared, and the respected. The dangerous, intimidating personality is defined not by the chaos it can create, but by the precision with which it navigates it. Those who wield influence most effectively understand that dominance is a quiet, patient orchestration, a dance of subtlety and perception. Hat bends the will of others without ever appearing forceful. Every word, every gesture, every silence is deliberate, calibrated to elicit compliance, deferential awe, or restrained fear. The Machiavellian mind sees human behavior not as a collection of emotions to be appeased, but as a landscape to be mapped, analyzed, and ultimately guided. Those who fail to perceive the invisible currents of control are swept aside, manipulated unconsciously, and reshaped to fit the objectives of the more astute. To dominate psychologically, one must first master observation. The dangerous individual watches not merely what is said, but how it is said. The hesitation, the subtle inflection, the fleeting gesture that reveals unguarded intent. Every interaction is a test, every conversation a data point. Machiavelli's rulers learned this in political intrigue. Here, it applies to all who navigate social structures. By discerning ambition, envy, desire, and fear in others, you gain leverage that cannot be resisted. Your presence alone becomes a force that shapes the decisions and movements of those around you. They act not because you command, but because they perceive inevitability in your influence. Hence, manipulation is never haphazard. It is calculated, invisible, and surgical. The dangerous personality uses human tendencies as instruments: the desire for approval, the fear of loss, the craving for recognition. Each trait becomes a lever, each reaction a mechanism to guide outcomes. Unlike crude intimidation, this form of influence is subtle, leaving those affected unaware of the guidance imposed upon them. Machiavelli understood that true authority is reinforced not by force alone, but by the silent acknowledgement of inevitability. When others act as though compelled by circumstance rather than your intent, you wield power most effectively, and the dangerous mind thrives in this silent orchestration. Consider the role of respect in tandem with fear. Intimidation alone breeds resentment. Admiration alone can invite challenge. The dangerous individual calibrates both, creating an aura that commands compliance without overt aggression. People adjust their behavior, not because of coercion, but because of perceived consequence. The balance is delicate. Too much fear invites rebellion. Too much warmth undermines authority. Through careful observation, measured action, and the cultivation of subtle tension, the Machiavellian personality achieves equilibrium, ensuring influence is durable, pervasive, and rarely challenged. Timing remains a weapon of unparalleled potency. Opportunity must be seized with precision. Hesitation risks vulnerability. Premature action risks exposure. The dangerous personality becomes acutely attuned to the rhythms of human behavior, social context, and circumstantial advantage. Like a predator, you act when the conditions are optimal, ensuring that outcomes align with strategy and that resistance is minimal. Patience is not passivity. It is an accumulation of control, a silent preparation that amplifies the impact of action when the moment arrives. Machiavelli extolled the virtue of timing in leadership, and here it manifests as the linchpin of subtle dominance. Isolation, paradoxically, strengthens influence. The intimidating personality relies on self-sufficiency, emotional independence, and intellectual clarity. By remaining detached from undue influence, validation, or manipulation, you maintain authority over perception and decision-making. Others instinctively sense this independence. It radiates competence, inevitability, and strength. Those who are tethered to the approval or whims of others are always vulnerable. The dangerous individual is untethered, sovereign, and therefore unassailable. Mystique amplifies all other aspects of influence. People fear what they cannot fully comprehend. By revealing only what is strategically necessary, maintaining composure, and demonstrating skill incrementally, you cultivate an aura of unpredictability and inevitability. Every encounter leaves an impression of latent power, competence, and subtle threat. Machiavelli recognized that the perception of strength can be more potent than strength itself. The dangerous personality embodies this principle. Power operates silently, invisibly, yet with undeniable force. Strategic empathy is another defining trait. Understanding the desires, fears, and weaknesses of others is not kindness, it is leverage. By perceiving human tendencies with clarity, the intimidating individual can anticipate behavior, redirect ambition, and influence decisions without exposure. Empathy here is a tool for mastery, not attachment. It allows the dangerous mind to orchestrate outcomes, manipulate perceptions, and cultivate influence while remaining untouchable emotionally. Internal discipline is the unseen engine of all influence. Observation, strategy, emotional control, and timing require rigorous mental cultivation. The dangerous individual relentlessly hones awareness, patience, and foresight. Every interaction becomes a calculated opportunity, every response measured, every silence intentional. The mastery of self is the foundation upon which influence and intimidation are built. Without it, perception can falter, authority can crumble, and strategy can fail. Machiavelli's advice echoes: the ruler, or the dangerous individual, must first conquer themselves before conquering the world around them. Then there is inevitability, the psychological force that renders resistance almost impossible. The intimidating personality operates with such clarity, foresight, and precision that outcomes appear preordained. Others sense this unconscious command, adjusting behavior, choices, and alliances accordingly. This perception of inevitability is one of the most potent weapons of influence. It is silent, subtle, and nearly invisible, yet it shapes reality more decisively than confrontation ever could. The dangerous individual does not demand compliance. They create circumstances where compliance feels like the only viable option. As the web of influence expands, subtle domination becomes self-reinforcing. Each interaction, each decision, each gesture consolidates authority, reshapes perception, and increases the psychological gravity of presence. Allies act predictably, adversaries hesitate, and neutral parties adjust unconsciously. The Machiavellian mind thrives in this space. Power is not flaunted, it is orchestrated. Dominance is not shouted, it is felt. The dangerous personality exists as a force around which reality bends, unseen yet undeniable, manipulating outcomes while appearing unassailable. And so, you arrive at a critical insight. Mastery over human behavior is both a science and an art. Observation, timing, empathy, control, mystique, and inevitability converge to form a personality that commands without force, influences without exposure, and dominates without confrontation. Machiavelli's lessons, distilled through centuries, illuminate the path. Influence is psychological, strategic, and relentless, operating best when invisible, calibrated, and inevitable. The dangerous, intimidating personality is not merely a reflection of temperament. It is deliberate construction, cultivated through discipline, reflection, and unflinching attention to human behavior. Every glance, every pause, every subtle gesture is a thread woven into a fabric of control. Those who possess this mastery move through the world like a silent storm, unseen yet profoundly felt, guiding outcomes, commanding respect, and instilling fear without uttering a word. The dangerous, intimidating personality is not an accident of circumstance. It is a relentless, deliberate cultivation of mind, perception, and influence. By now you understand that every glance, every word, every calculated pause contributes to an invisible architecture of power. You have learned to observe with precision, to anticipate human behavior, to manipulate perception without exposure, and to balance fear with respect, independence with strategic empathy, and mystique with subtle revelation. You have seen how timing, emotional sovereignty, and inevitability combine to create an aura that is magnetic, commanding, and quietly unavoidable. The final realization emerges: mastery over yourself is mastery over the world around you. Every person you encounter is a mirror, a reflection of their desires, fears, ambitions, and weaknesses. The dangerous personality does not merely interact with these reflections, it shapes them, bends them, and aligns them with strategy. You no longer exist merely among others, you exist as the force that moves them. Allies adjust instinctively, rivals hesitate, and the environment conforms subtly to your will. The Machiavellian lessons are not abstractions, they are lived, experiential, and tangible. You have seen the evidence: subtle influence, psychological gravity, the quiet inevitability of command, and now you stand at the threshold, the apex of understanding. Weigh. Rethought becomes action. Presence becomes dominion, and perception becomes reality. To cultivate such a presence requires discipline that borders on obsession. Every internal conflict must be observed and mastered. Every emotional fluctuation analyzed and contained. Every decision measured for consequence and advantage. You must be patient, calculating, ruthless in analysis, yet subtle in execution. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. It is the crucible through which the dangerous personality is forged. Machiavelli taught that princes succeed not by virtue alone, but through cunning, strategy, and perception. The same principle applies to you. The mastery of self, the orchestration of influence, and the calculated command of fear and respect are your instruments of inevitability. Consider the power of inevitability. When others perceive you as unshakable, when your choices appear preordained by clarity and competence, resistance becomes almost impossible. The dangerous personality does not demand compliance. It creates circumstances where compliance feels like the only rational choice. Every pause, every measured gesture, every subtle action amplifies this perception. People begin to act as though the world naturally bends to your presence. This is the ultimate form of psychological dominance, a Machiavellian principle made manifest. Influence is most potent when it is invisible, undeniable, and inevitable. Yet with this power comes responsibility, not ethical or moral, but strategic. Every misstep, every lapse in observation, every emotional indulgence can unravel the carefully constructed web of authority. The dangerous personality is relentless in maintaining vigilance, in reading intentions, anticipating reactions, and controlling perception. There is no room for naivety or indulgence. Mastery demands clarity, focus, and the constant refinement of skill. The path is arduous, but the rewards are profound. Control over circumstance, alignment of human behavior with strategy, and the cultivation of presence that is both feared and respected. Now, you must embrace transformation fully. Recognize that intimidation is not aggression, that dominance is not tyranny, that fear without respect is hollow. Cultivate patience, refine observation, master emotional control, and orchestrate perception. Let every interaction, every gesture, every glance serve the architecture of influence. Develop the inevitability that commands obedience without coercion, respect without flattery, and fear without hatred. This is the apex of the dangerous, intimidating personality, a state of being where your mind shapes reality, your presence dictates outcomes, and your mastery over human behavior is unassailable. Step into this fully. Observe with intensity, calculate with precision, act with inevitability. Use subtlety as your weapon, timing as your ally, perception as your instrument, and internal discipline as your shield. The world will respond, often unconsciously, aligning with the gravitational force of your presence. Those who fail to recognize it will hesitate, falter, and submit. Those who try to resist will be compelled to follow the currents you have orchestrated. You are no longer a participant. You are the architect of reality, the silent force that shapes events, the unshakable presence that others cannot ignore. Understand this. True power is psychological, strategic, and relentless. It thrives in silence, invisibility, and subtlety. It demands mastery over self before mastery over others. The dangerous, intimidating personality is forged through observation, patience, discipline, timing, and the precise calibration of fear, respect, and perception. To inhabit it is to transcend ordinary influence, to bend reality to intention, and to exist as an inevitability in every sphere you enter. Machiavelli's darkest lessons are not theoretical. They are lived, actionable, and transformative. And now you must act. No longer simply study the principles. No longer merely observe the dynamics of influence. Step forward with deliberate calculation. Command presence without announcing it. Influence outcomes without exposure. Instill awe without speaking. Cultivate inevitability. Shape perception. Harness fear and respect as instruments. Observe endlessly. Anticipate without hesitation, and act with precision. Let the architecture of your mind dictate reality, and let your presence leave an indelible mark on every space, every decision, every life you touch. This is the ultimate expression of the dangerous, intimidating personality, not a shadow cast over others, but a force that reshapes the very fabric of interaction, perception, and power itself. Embrace it now. Become unshakable, inevitable, and relentless. Let every glance, every word, every action reflect mastery over self and the world around you. Move through life as a silent storm, unseen yet impossible to ignore, commanding influence with subtlety, precision, and quiet authority. This is your moment to step beyond fear, beyond hesitation, beyond ordinary perception, and become the architect of inevitability. The world bends to those who understand it. Become that one. Become unstoppable,